Hey guys, tonight we're plunging into the gritty, salt-crusted world of 18th century pirates, where the high seas smell of tar and trouble, and your dental hygiene is about as reliable as a leaky sloop in a storm. Picture yourself swaying on a weathered ship deck, the Caribbean sun scorching your face, waves hissing against the hull like they've got a personal grudge. Your boots stick to the planks, tacky with spilled rum, and who knows what, while the crew's shouting over the creak of rigging, their breath foul enough to make you rethink your life choices. You're pretty sure you wouldn't survive a week in this floating chaos. Too much scurvy, too little toothpaste. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Drop a comment with your location and local time. I love knowing where you're drifting off from. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You're aboard a pirate ship, maybe somewhere off Nassau in 1718, where the air's thick with salt and the crew's thicker with bad ideas. The deck's a mess, barrels lashed to the rails, ropes coiled like sleeping snakes, and a goat chewing something that's probably not food. You're here because you've heard the wild tales, pirates cleaning their teeth with gunpowder of all things. You're not sure if it's genius or madness, but your own teeth feel gritty just thinking about it. The crew's a rough lot, their tunics stained with sweat and tar, and you're catching whiffs of stale tobacco and sour ale every time someone opens their mouth. You're hoping nobody notices you're not exactly Blackbeard material, but their eyes are on you and it's not exactly calming. Mainstream fact. In the early 18th century, pirates, like most sailors, faced brutal dental health challenges due to poor diet and no access to modern dentistry, with tooth decay and gum disease rampant on long voyages. You're standing near the mainmast, watching a grizzled pirate pick at his blackened teeth with a splintered knife, and you're wincing at the thought of what's growing in there. The ship's pitching gently, and you steady yourself against a barrel, feeling the wood's rough grain under your palms. The sun's relentless, and you're squinting against the glare, wishing for a hat or at least a cloud. You're starting to wonder how anyone kept their teeth at all, let alone cleaned them, in this floating nightmare of a life. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed gunpowder, mixed with spit, could scrub teeth clean and ward off evil spirits, a trick they swore by despite the risk of blowing their faces off. You're imagining the taste, acrid, smoky, like licking a cannon, and you're not sure whether to laugh or gag. The crew's shouting about a merchant ship on the horizon, but you're distracted by a sailor nearby, grinning with a gap where a tooth should be, probably lost to a bar brawl or a bad apple. You're wondering if gunpowder's their only dental plan, or if there's more to this story. Historians still argue whether these remedies were practical or just desperate folklore, with some saying pirates were surprisingly resourceful, while others think they were just making it up as they went. You shuffle across the deck, your boots catching on a loose nail, and the air's got that briny sting that makes your eyes water. The crew's energy is chaotic, like a tavern fight waiting to happen, but there's a rhythm to it. Shouts, laughter, the slap of waves. You're nervous, sure, but there's something oddly thrilling about being here, like you're part of a story nobody'd believe back home. You catch a glimpse of the ship's surgeon, a lanky guy with a leather apron, sharpening something that looks suspiciously like a dental tool. You're hoping you don't end up under his knife, but for now, you're just trying to blend in, dodging the goat and keeping your own teeth out of trouble. Joke time. Why did the pirate brush with gunpowder? Because he wanted a smile that sparked fear. You're not laughing though, because the deck's swaying harder now, and you're gripping the barrel like it's your only friend. The crew's getting louder, and you're starting to feel like the new guy at a very dangerous party. You glance at the horizon where the sea meets the sky in a hazy line, and you're wondering what's next. More gunpowder maybe, or something even weirder. The ship's bell clangs and you're snapped back to the moment, ready to see what dental horrors these pirates have in store. You're still swaying on that creaky pirate ship, the Caribbean sun roasting your skin like you're a forgotten fish on a grill, and the decks sticky with salt and spilled rum. Remember that grizzled sailor picking at his teeth with a knife? You're noticing now how most of the crew's grins are a patchwork of black stumps and gaps, and you're starting to feel a phantom ache in your own jaw. The sea's churning, waves slapping the hull like they're annoyed, and you're gripping a rope to keep from stumbling. The air smells of tar and sweat, with a faint whiff of something rotting, probably not just the fish. You're here to unravel the mystery of pirate dental care, but right now, you're just trying not to gag at the state of everyone's mouths. Mainstream fact, in the 18th century, poor nutrition, think hardtack, salted pork, and not a vegetable in sight, led to rampant tooth decay among pirates, often worsened by the lack of clean water for basic hygiene. You're watching a pirate, his tunic stained with grease, chew on a piece of hardtack so tough it could double as a cannonball. He winces, and you're guessing another tooth's about to give up the fight. The ship's rocking harder now, and you're dodging a barrel that's rolling loose, its wood splintered and slick. You're wondering how anyone's teeth survive this diet, let alone get cleaned. When brushing's not exactly on the daily roster, you're starting to feel the crew's pain, like your own molars are staging a quiet rebellion. The deck's a chaos of ropes and crates, and you catch a glimpse of a sailor spitting something dark into the sea, maybe blood, maybe just bad luck. Here's a quirky tidbit. Pirates sometimes blame toothaches on demons in their gums, rubbing charms or even gunpowder into their mouths to scare the pain away. You're picturing a sailor muttering curses at his aching jaw, smearing black powder like it's a magic spell, and you're half tempted to try it yourself, just to feel something other than seasickness. The idea's absurd, but in this world of salt and scurvy, you're starting to get why they'd believe it. Historians still argue whether pirates' dental woes were just a side effect of their brutal lifestyle, or if they actively tried to fight decay with whatever they had. Some say they were too busy raiding to care, while others point to scattered records of sailors using crude remedies. Either way, you're not feeling optimistic as you watch another pirate, this one with a scarf tied over his head, grimace while chewing. His teeth look like a shipwreck, and you're wondering if gunpowder's really the answer, or just a way to make the pain taste worse. The crew's shouting about a sail on the horizon, but you're too focused on the dental disaster in front of you to care. You shuffle toward the ship's rail, the wood rough under your palms, and the sea spray hits your face, sharp and cold. It's almost refreshing, cutting through the stench of unwashed bodies and rotting food. You're noticing the crew's hands, calloused, scarred, and not exactly screaming hygiene. One sailor's picking at his teeth with a fishbone, and you're wincing at the thought of what's stuck in there. The ship's bell clangs and you're snapped back to the moment, the deck vibrating under your boots. You're starting to feel like you're in a floating dentist's nightmare, where the only tools are knives and hope, and neither's doing much good. Joke time. Why did the pirate's teeth hurt? Because his diet was a real shipwreck. You're not laughing, though, because the ache in your own jaw's getting louder, like it's sympathizing with the crew. The sun's dipping lower, painting the sea gold, and you're catching a whiff of something smoky. Maybe a cook fire below deck, maybe someone's already mixing gunpowder for their teeth. You're curious, despite yourself, about how they make this work. The crew's energy is restless, like they're itching for a fight or at least a distraction from their rotting mouths. You're hoping the next stop, maybe a port, maybe a raid, has something better than fishbones for dental care, but you're not holding your breath. You're still clinging to that pirate ship's rail, the Caribbean Sea spraying your face like it's trying to wake you up, and the crew's grimaces are making your own teeth ache in sympathy. Remember that sailor blaming demons for his toothache? You're about to get up close with their go-to remedy, gunpowder, the gritty, explosive stuff they're using as toothpaste. The deck's a chaos of barrels and ropes, and you're dodging a sailor who's just tripped over a coil, cursing loud enough to scare the gulls. The air's thick with salt and the sharp tang of tar, and you're starting to feel like you're in a dental horror show, where the only brush is a powder keg and the stakes are higher than a crow's nest. Mainstream fact. In the early 18th century, gunpowder was a staple on pirate ships, used not just for cannons but also as a makeshift abrasive for cleaning teeth, as noted in sailors' journals from the period. You're watching a wiry pirate, his tunic patched and faded, scoop a pinch of black powder from a small pouch. He mixes it with spit in his palm like he's prepping a potion, then rubs it across his teeth with a finger, grimacing at the taste. You're close enough to smell the acrid burn, like a firecracker gone wrong, and you're wondering how this doesn't end in a spark and a very bad day. The ship lurches and you grab the rail tighter, your boots slipping on the slick deck. You're trying to imagine the sensation, gritty, smoky, like chewing a campfire, and your own jaw clenches in protest. The sailor spits a dark wad into the sea, and you're hoping it's just powder, not a tooth. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates swore gunpowder not only cleaned, but toughened their teeth, claiming it made them fierce enough to bite through rope in a pinch. You're picturing this guy chomping on rigging like it's jerky, and it's almost funny until you see his blackened gums. Crews bustling around you, hauling ropes and shouting about a storm brewing, but you're too focused on this dental experiment to care. You're starting to wonder if gunpowder's less about hygiene and more about proving you're tougher than your toothache. Historians still argue whether gunpowder was an effective cleaner or just a placebo born of desperation, with some saying its abrasiveness scraped plaque, while others think it did more harm than good. Either way, you're not volunteering to try it. You shuffle along the deck, the wood creaking underfoot, and catch a whiff of something sweeter, maybe molasses from a leaking barrel nearby. It's a brief relief from the gunpowder's bite, but the sailor's still rubbing his teeth, and you're wincing at the thought of what's left in his mouth. The sun's high, baking your neck, and you're wishing for a breeze, or at least a sip of something that doesn't taste like explosives. You're noticing the crew's hands now, scarred, grimy, and definitely not sterile, as another pirate joins in, scooping his own pinch of powder. He's got a gold hoop in one ear and a grin that's more gaps than teeth, and you're wondering how he's so cheerful about this. The ship's bell clangs and you flinch, the sound cutting through the deck's noise like a knife. You're starting to feel like you're in a floating madhouse, where dental care's a mix of courage and insanity. The gunpowder pouch is passed around, and you're tempted to peek inside, but you're also worried someone will dare you to try it. You're not that brave, or that foolish. Joke time. Why did pirates love gunpowder paste? Because it gave their smiles some real firepower. You're not laughing, though, because the sailor's spitting again, and you're pretty sure you saw blood this time. The sea's getting choppier, waves slapping the hull like they're impatient, and you're gripping the rail so hard your knuckles ache. You're curious what's next. More gunpowder, maybe, or something even wilder. The crew's energy is restless, like they're itching for a raid to distract from their aching jaws. You're hoping you can stay out of their way, just watching this dental disaster unfold, but the ship's swaying's making it hard to think straight. You're still on that swaying pirate ship, the Caribbean sun scorching your neck, and the bitter taste of gunpowder toothpaste lingers in your imagination like a bad meal. Remember that wiry pirate scrubbing his teeth with black powder? You're now catching sight of the ship's surgeon, the guy you spotted earlier with the suspicious leather apron, and he's rummaging through a wooden chest that looks like it's seen better days. The deck's a tangle of ropes and barrels, and you're stepping carefully to avoid a pile of fish guts some genius left out to bake. The air's heavy with salt and the faint reek of rot, and you're starting to think pirate dental care might involve more than just gunpowder, and not in a good way. Mainstream fact in the 18th century, ship surgeons, often untrained, and doubling as carpenters or butchers, handled dental issues with crude tools like pliers and knives, pulling teeth as the primary fix for decay. You're watching the surgeon, his hands scarred and steady, pull out a rusty set of iron tongs that look more suited to blacksmithing than dentistry. He's got a small crowd of sailors watching, some wincing, others jeering as he lays out his kit on a barrel, a chipped blade, a wooden mallet, and something that might be a needle but could just as easily be a fishhook. You're close enough to see the sweat on his brow, and you're hoping he's not about to call you over for a checkup. You're gripping the ship's rail, the wood splintered under your fingers, as the surgeon beckons a sailor with a swollen jaw. The poor guy's tunic is stained with tar, and he's muttering curses like they'll save him. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirate surgeons believed knocking a patient out with a belaying pin before yanking a tooth was kinder than letting them scream, though the concussion probably wasn't much better. You're picturing this sailor getting whacked, then waking up minus a molar, and it's almost funny until you see the tongs glint in the sun. The deck's pitching and you're fighting to keep your lunch down. The seas churn, mixing with the surgeon's grim setup like a recipe for nightmares. Historians still argue whether these surgeons were skilled or just hacks with sharp tools, with some saying they saved lives under brutal conditions, while others think their cures often did more damage. Either way, you're not signing up for a tooth pull. You shuffle closer, dodging a sailor who's spitting tobacco juice over the side, and catch a whiff of something sharp, maybe rum, maybe the surgeon's attempt at sterilizing his tools. The sailor's now seated on a crate, his eyes wide, as the surgeon grips the tongs and you're wincing in advance. The crowd's half laughing, half grimacing, and you're wondering how anyone survives this without passing out. The ship's bell clangs, cutting through the noise of waves and shouts, and you flinch, your heart racing like you're the one in the hot seat. The air's thick with the scent of seaweed and sweat, and you're noticing the surgeon's apron, speckled with stains that don't bear thinking about. He's muttering something, maybe a prayer, maybe instructions, and you're catching words like hold still and bite this. The sailor's handed a leather strap to chomp on, and you're thinking it's less about comfort and more about not breaking his jaw. You're starting to feel like you're in a medieval torture chamber, except it's floating and smells worse. Joke time! Why was the pirate surgeon so calm? Because he always had a grip on things. You're not laughing though, because the surgeon's now leaning in, tongs poised, and the sailor's muffled groan is making your own teeth ache. The deck's swaying harder, waves slapping the hull like they're cheering the chaos, and you're gripping the rail so tight your knuckles are white. You're curious what happens next. Does the tooth come out clean, or is this about to get messier? The crew's energy is restless, like they're betting on the outcome, and you're just hoping you can stay out of the surgeon's line of sight, watching this dental disaster unfold from a safe distance. You're still on that pitching pirate ship, the Caribbean sun searing your skin, and the surgeon's rusty tongs from that tooth-pulling scene are haunting you like a bad dream. Remember the sailor with the swollen jaw, biting a leather strap? You're now catching a whiff of something sharp and sweet cutting through the deck's usual stink of tar and fish guts. It's rum, and not just for drinking, the crew's using it as a makeshift mouthwash to dull the pain of their rotting teeth. The deck's a mess of coils and crates, and you're sidestepping a puddle of spilled ale, the waves hissing against the hull like they're gossiping about the chaos. You're here to see how pirates fight dental agony, and rum's starting to look like their best friend. Mainstream fact. In the 18th century, rum was a staple on pirate ships, valued not only as a drink, but also as a crude antiseptic and painkiller, often swished to numb aching gums or clean wounds as noted in maritime logs. You're watching a burly pirate, his tunic, half unbuttoned and stained with grease, tilt a clay jug to his lips, swishing the amber liquid before spitting it over the rail. His face twists, maybe from the burn, maybe from a tooth that's past saving, and you're close enough to smell the rum's molasses tang, warm and syrupy. The ship lurches and you grab a rope, your boots slipping on the slick planks, wishing you had a sip yourself to steady your nerves. You're imagining the sensation, fiery, sweet, like gargling a campfire, and your own mouth puckers in sympathy. The pirate passes the jug to a mate who's got a scarf tied over one eye and teeth that look like they've seen better days. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed swishing rum could purify their mouths, thinking the alcohol chased away bad spirits along with the pain. You're picturing this guy gargling like he's casting out demons, and it's almost funny until you see him wince, clutching his jaw. The deck's buzzing with shouts and laughter, but you're focused on this rum ritual, wondering if it's doing any good or just making their breath flammable. Historians still argue whether rum was a legitimate dental aid or just a way to cope with misery, with some saying its antiseptic properties helped, while others think it was a placebo that rotted teeth faster. Either way, you're not eager to try it. You shuffle along the deck, the wood creaking underfoot, and catch a faint whiff of gunpowder from a nearby sailor still fiddling with his pouch. Yep, they're mixing remedies like it's a bad cocktail party. The sun's dipping, casting long shadows, and you're noticing the crew's hands, grimy, scarred, and definitely not dentist approved, as they pass the jug around. The ship's bell clangs and you flinch, the sound sharp against the wave's steady slap. You're leaning against a barrel, its wood rough and splintered, and the rum's scent is mingling with the sea's briny sting. The one-eyed pirate's now spitting into the ocean, and you're hoping it's just rum, not blood. The crew's energy is loose, like they're halfway to drunk, or just desperate for relief. You're starting to feel like you're in a floating bar with the worst hygiene plan ever, where pain's the norm and rum's the answer. A gull screeches overhead, and you glance up, squinting against the glare, wondering what's next. More rum, maybe, or something even stranger. You're curious, despite the ache in your own jaw, about how they keep this up without losing every tooth. Joke time. Why did pirates swish rum? Because it was cheaper than a dentist's bill. You're not laughing, though, because the burly pirate's wincing again, and you're pretty sure his tooth's not thanking him. The sea's getting rougher, waves tossing spray onto the deck, and you're gripping the rope tighter, your knuckles pale. You're wondering if the next port'll have anything better than rum and gunpowder, but the crew's not betting on it. Their laughter's loud, but there's a grim edge, like they know relief's temporary. You're just hoping to stay out of trouble, watching this boozy dental ritual unfold, your own mouth dry as the deck's weathered planks. You're no longer swaying on that pirate ship, the sting of rum mouthwash a fading memory as you step into a smoky tavern in Nassau, 1718, where the air's thick with tobacco and tall tales. The Caribbean night wraps the port like a damp blanket, and you're brushing past sailors in patched tunics, their laughs rough as the wooden benches they sprawl on. The tavern's a haze of flickering oil lamps, and you're catching whiffs of sour ale and roasted pork, mixed with something funkier, probably the guy next to you. Remember that one-eyed pirate swishing rum? You're now surrounded by his kind, swapping stories about dental fixes that sound more like myths than medicine, and you're here to sift through the nonsense. Mainstream fact. In 18th century port towns like Nassau, taverns were hubs for pirate culture, where sailors shared remedies and folklore, including dubious dental tips as recorded in journals from the golden age of piracy. You're squeezing onto a bench, the wood creaking under you, as a grizzled sailor with a braided beard spins a tale about chewing tar to seal loose teeth. His hands wave wildly, scarred and stained, and you're wincing at the thought of tar's sticky, piney bite. The tavern's loud, dice clatter, mugs thud, and someone's butchering a sea shanty, but you're focused on these dental yarns, wondering which ones the crew actually believed. You're nursing a clay mug of ale, its bitterness sharp on your tongue, and the sailor's story gets weirder. He claims a witch in Tortuga sold him a charm to curse toothaches away. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates hung shark teeth or beads around their necks, believing they'd ward off dental pain, a superstition rooted in Caribbean and African traditions. You're picturing this guy dangling a shark tooth, muttering prayers to his gums, and it's almost comical until you see his smile, more gaps than pearls. The tavern's heat is stifling, and you're fanning yourself with your sleeve, the air heavy with smoke and sweat. You're starting to feel like you're in a pirate dentist's waiting room, except the advice is wilder and the drinks are stronger. Historians still argue whether these tavern tales were practical knowledge or just drunken boasts, with some saying they spread useful remedies, while others think they were mostly hot air to impress the crowd. Either way, you're not buying the tar-chewing trick. You lean back, the bench digging into your spine, and catch a whiff of something sweet, maybe molasses from a spilled jug nearby. Another sailor, his tunic open to show a scarred chest, chimes in, claiming he scrubbed his teeth with cannon soot for extra shine. You're trying not to laugh, but the crew's nodding like it's gospel, and you're wondering if you've stumbled into a dental conspiracy. The tavern's noise swells and you're dodging a sloshed mug as someone toasts to strong teeth and stronger rum. You're noticing the details now, the tavern's walls, scarred with knife marks, and a wicker basket of bread crusts on the table, half-eaten and swarmed by flies. The sailor's still talking, his braided beard bouncing, and you're curious if any of these remedies worked or if they just made the pain feel heroic. The lamps cast jittery shadows and you're squinting through the haze, spotting a woman in a frayed shawl, dealing cards at another table. She's probably heard these stories 100 times and you're wondering if she's got her own dental hack. The night's young, but the tavern's timeless, like it's been hosting these debates since the first pirate dropped anchor. Joke time. Why did pirates swap dental tales? Because misery loves a mug of ale. You're not laughing, though, because the sailor's now describing a tooth-strengthening stew made with fish bones, and your stomach's turning. The tavern's floor is sticky, your boots catching on spilled wax, and you're feeling the weight of the crowd's energy, rowdy, restless, like they're one bad story away from a brawl. You're curious what's next, more myths maybe, or a fight over who's got the worst teeth. The sea's murmur drifts through the open door, a reminder of the ship you left behind, and you're hoping the next tale's got something better than soot or shark teeth to keep your jaw intact. You're stumbling out of that smoky Nassau tavern, the sailor's wild dental tales, tar, shark teeth and all, still buzzing in your ears like a bad shanty, and you're back on the creaking deck of a pirate ship under a blazing Caribbean sun. The air's thick with salt and the sour tang of unwashed tunics, and you're dodging a sailor hauling a barrel, his curses sharper than the knife at his belt. Remember that toothache demon pirates blamed? You're now seeing the real culprit. Scurvy, the pirate's curse that's turning their gums into a nightmare. The deck's a tangle of ropes and crates, and you're gripping the rail as the ship sways, waves slapping the hull like they're mocking your queasy stomach. You're here to witness how scurvy's wrecking the crew's mouths, and it's not a pretty sight. Mainstream fact: scurvy, caused by vitamin C deficiency, was rampant among 18th century pirates due to diets heavy on hardtack and salted meat, leading to swollen, bleeding gums and loose teeth, as documented in ship logs from the era. You're watching a lanky sailor, his scarf loose around his neck, spit blood into a wooden bucket, his gums puffy and purple, like overripe fruit. He's chewing slowly, wincing with every bite, and you're close enough to see the gaps where teeth have already jumped ship. The sun's relentless, baking your skin, and you're squinting against the glare, wishing for a cloud or at least a hat to shield you from this dental disaster. You're feeling a phantom ache in your own gums, like scurvy's contagious just by looking. The sailor's tunic is frayed, stained with sweat, and he's muttering about bad air causing his woes. Nobody's told him about vitamins yet. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates thought scurvy was a curse from angered sea gods, rubbing salt or even gunpowder on their gums to appease them, which only made the bleeding worse. You're picturing this guy smearing powder like it's a sacred ritual, and it's almost tragic until you remember he's still swinging a cutlass like it's nobody's business. The deck's buzzing, shouts, creaking wood, a gull screeching overhead, but you're focused on those swollen gums, wondering how anyone keeps eating hardtack with a mouth like that. Historians still argue whether scurvy's dental toll was just bad luck or a sign of deeper neglect, with some saying pirates could have avoided it with better supplies, while others think long voyages made it inevitable. Either way, you're not craving hardtack anytime soon. You shuffle along the deck, your boots catching on a splinter, and catch a whiff of something foul. Maybe the bucket, maybe the crew's collective breath. Another sailor, this one with a gold hoop in his ear, is rubbing his jaw, his teeth loose enough to rattle. You're wincing, imagining the pain, and the ship's pitch isn't helping, tossing you against a crate. The air's briny, stinging your eyes, and you're starting to feel like you're in a floating hospital with no cure in sight. You're noticing the crew's hands now, scarred, grimy, and definitely not gentle, as they pass around a jug, probably rum, to numb the pain. The lanky sailor's still spitting, and you're hoping it's not contagious, though the deck's hygiene isn't inspiring confidence. The ship's bell clangs, sharp and jarring, and you flinch, your heart racing like you're the one with scurvy. You're starting to see why gunpowder and rum were their go-to fixes. Desperation makes anything seem reasonable. A breeze kicks up, carrying the scent of seaweed and something smoky, maybe a cook fire below deck, and it's almost enough to distract you from the bloody bucket. Almost. Joke time. Why did scurvy hate pirates' teeth? Because it wanted to sink their smiles first. You're not laughing, though, because the sailor's wincing again, and you're pretty sure his next spit's got a tooth in it. The sea's rough, waves tossing spray onto the deck, and you're gripping the rail, your knuckles pale. You're curious what's next. More scurvy woes, maybe? Or some wild fix the crew's cooked up. Their energy's grim, like they're fighting a losing battle with their own mouths, and you're just hoping to stay out of the way, watching this dental decay unfold like a slow-motion shipwreck. You're still on that creaking pirate ship, the Caribbean sun blistering your skin, and the bloody bucket from that scurvy-ravaged sailor's spit is still too close for comfort. The deck's a chaos of ropes and barrels, and you're sidestepping a sailor who's cursing at a tangled net, his breath foul enough to make you wince. Remember those swollen purple gums? You're now witnessing the crew's desperate attempts to fix their teeth when scurvy and decay have done their worst, using whatever's at hand, bones, wire, even bits of sailcloth. The sea's tossing the ship like it's annoyed, waves slapping the hull, and the air's thick with salt and the sharp stink of tar. You're here to see how pirates patch up their mouths, and it's as grim as it sounds. Mainstream fact. In the 18th century, pirates and sailors often resorted to crude dental repairs like tying loose teeth with twine or hammering in makeshift fillings due to the lack of proper dentists, as noted in maritime records from the period. You're watching a stocky pirate, his tunic patched with sailcloth, sit on a crate while another sailor, maybe a carpenter by trade, fiddles with a piece of whalebone and a rusty nail. They're trying to fashion a cap for a broken tooth, and you're close enough to hear the stocky guy's muffled groans, his hands gripping the crate like it's his only anchor. The sun's high, baking the deck, and you're squinting, wishing for shade as the ship lurches under your boots. You're imagining the pain, sharp, relentless, like a knife in your jaw, and your own teeth clench in sympathy. The carpenter's hands are scarred, his fingers clumsy as he wraps twine around the bone, muttering about holding it steady. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates used melted lead or even stolen silver to fill cavities, believing it sealed the tooth, though it often poisoned their gums instead. You're picturing this guy with a mouth full of pirate bling, and it's almost funny until you see him wince, blood trickling from his lip. The deck's buzzing, shouts, creaking wood, a gull's screech, but you're focused on this makeshift dentistry, wondering how anyone thinks this is better than just yanking the tooth. Historians still argue whether these repairs were ingenious or just reckless, with some saying pirates' resourcefulness kept them fighting, while others think these fixes caused more infections than they cured. Either way, you're not volunteering for a whalebone crown. You shuffle closer, your boots catching on a splinter, and catch a whiff of something acrid, maybe gunpowder from a nearby pouch, or maybe the carpenter's attempt at sterilizing his tools with rum. The stocky pirate's eyes are watering, and you're wincing as the nail goes in, the sound like a tiny hammer on a coffin. The crew's half watching, some jeering, others turning away, and you're starting to feel like you're in a floating torture chamber. You're leaning against a barrel, its wood rough and warm, and the sea spray hits your face, sharp and cold. It's a brief relief from the deck's stench, sweat, fish, and something rotting in a corner. The carpenter's now tying off the twine, and you're noticing his apron, stained with what you hope is just tar. The ship's bell clangs, jarring your nerves, and you flinch, your heart racing like you're the one under the nail. You're starting to see why gunpowder and rum were easier. This repair's a marathon of pain. A breeze kicks up, carrying the scent of seaweed and smoke, and you're wondering what's next. More bone and nail fixes or something even crazier. The crew's energy is tense, like they're betting on whether this guy'll scream first. Joke time. Why did pirates fix their teeth? So they could still chew their pride. You're not laughing though, because the stocky pirate's groaning louder, and you're pretty sure that Nail's not staying put. The sea's rough, waves tossing spray onto the deck, and you're gripping the barrel, your knuckles pale. You're curious, despite the grim scene, about what other fixes they've got up their sleeves. The crew's muttering, some about the repair, some about a raid, and you're just hoping to stay out of the carpenter's sights, watching this dental desperation unfold like a shipwreck you can't look away from. You're still swaying on that weathered pirate ship, the Caribbean sun scorching your neck, and the memory of that whalebone and nail dental fix is making your jaw ache just thinking about it. The deck's a clutter of ropes and barrels, and you're dodging a sailor who's scrubbing the planks with a rag, his curses mingling with the waves' steady slap against the hull. Remember that stocky pirate groaning through his tooth repair? You're now noticing the crew's latest dental trick, scrubbing their teeth with sea salt, scraped from the ship's stores or the ocean itself. The air's thick with brine and the faint reek of fish, and you're here to see how salt becomes a pirate's toothbrush, gritty and stinging, but better than nothing. Mainstream fact, in the 18th century, sea salt was a common abrasive for cleaning teeth among sailors, valued for its availability and mild antiseptic properties, as mentioned in maritime journals from the period. You're watching a lean pirate, his tunic frayed at the hem, dip his fingers into a wooden bucket of coarse salt crystals, glinting like tiny diamonds in the sun. He rubs the salt across his teeth, grimacing as it scrapes his gums, and you're close enough to hear the faint crunch like sand underfoot. The ship lurches and you grab a rope, your boots slipping on the slick deck, wishing you could rinse the salt sting from your own mouth, just watching. You're imagining the sensation, sharp, gritty, like gargling a beach, and your own gums tingle in protest. The pirate spits a frothy mix into the sea, and you're hoping it's just salt, not blood, from those scurvy-weakened gums you saw earlier. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed sea salt carried the ocean's strength, thinking it could harden their teeth against decay, a superstition tied to their reverence for the sea. You're picturing this guy scrubbing like he's channeling Neptune himself, and it's almost funny until you see his red, raw gums. The deck's alive with shouts and the creak of rigging, but you're focused on this salty ritual, wondering if it's doing any good or just adding insult to injury. Historians still argue whether salt was a practical dental tool or a placebo rooted in sailor lore, with some saying its abrasiveness helped clean, while others think it irritated already damaged mouths. Either way, you're not eager to try it. You shuffle along the deck, the wood warm underfoot, and catch a whiff of something smoky, maybe a cook fire below deck, or maybe gunpowder from that pouch you keep seeing. The lean pirate's still scrubbing, his fingers caked with salt, and you're wincing at the thought of what's left in his mouth. The sun's dipping lower, casting long shadows, and you're noticing the crew's hands, scarred, grimy, and definitely not sterile, as they pass the bucket around, each taking a pinch. You're leaning against a crate, its wood splintered and sticky with tar, and the sea spray hits your face, cold and sharp. It's a brief relief from the deck's heat, but the salt sting lingers in your mind like you've tasted it yourself. Another sailor, this one with a faded tattoo on his arm, joins in, rubbing salt with a grin like it's a badge of toughness. The ship's bell clangs, cutting through the noise, and you flinch, your heart racing like you're the one scrubbing. You're starting to feel like you're in a floating apothecary, where every remedy's a gamble and pain's the only guarantee. A gull screeches overhead and you glance up, squinting against the glare, wondering what's next, more salt, or something even grittier. Joke time, why did pirates scrub with salt? Because they wanted teeth as tough as the sea? You're not laughing though, because the lean pirate's spitting again, and you're pretty sure his gums are bleeding. The sea's choppy, waves tossing spray onto the deck, and you're gripping the rope tighter, your knuckles pale. You're curious, despite the grim scene, about how they keep this up. Salt, rum, gunpowder, and sheer stubbornness. The crew's energy is restless, like they're itching for a raid to distract from their aching jaws, and you're just hoping to stay out of the way, watching this salty dental ritual unfold like a gritty chapter in a very strange book. You're still braced on that weathered pirate ship, the Caribbean sun searing your skin, and the gritty sting of sea salt from that tooth-scrubbing ritual lingers in your mind like sand in your boots. The deck's a jumble of ropes and crates, and you're dodging a sailor who's hauling a net, his tunic soaked with sweat, and his breath sharp with rum. Remember that lean pirate rubbing salt on his gums? You're now catching sight of the ship's captain, a figure who stands out like a polished cannon among rusty nails, his teeth surprisingly intact and gleaming. The seas tossing the ship, waves hissing against the hull, and the air's thick with brine and the faint smoke of a cookfire below. You're here to see how a captain keeps his grin pirate-worthy, and it's a mystery worth unraveling. Mainstream fact: in the 18th century, pirate captains, often wealthier and better connected than their crews, sometimes accessed superior food and hygiene supplies, helping preserve their teeth, as noted in accounts of figures like Blackbeard and Bartholomew Roberts. You're watching the captain, his tricorn hat tilted just so, stride across the deck, his crimson coat embroidered with gold thread catching the sun. He flashes a grin at a sailor, revealing teeth that are, shockingly, not a shipwreck, and you're close enough to see the faint shine, like he's been polishing them with something better than gunpowder. The ship lurches and you grab a barrel, your boots slipping on the slick planks, wondering what his secret is in this dental disaster zone. You're marveling at his smile, a stark contrast to the crew's gap-toothed grimaces, and your own jaw feels jealous. The captain's barking orders, his voice sharp over the waves, and you're noticing his boots, polished leather, not the scuffed rags of the crew. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some captains carried personal stashes of rare spices like clove or cinnamon, chewing them to freshen breath and soothe gums, a luxury their crews could only dream of. You're picturing him popping a clove like it's pirate candy, and it's almost comical until you remember the scurvy-ravaged mouths around you. The deck's alive with shouts and creaking wood, but you're focused on this gleaming grin, wondering if it's wealth, discipline, or just dumb luck keeping his teeth intact. Historians still argue whether captains' better dental health was due to privilege or deliberate care, with some saying their access to plunder bought better diets, while others think they just got lucky with stronger teeth. Either way, you're not betting on cloves being the whole story. You shuffle closer, your boots catching on a rope, and catch a whiff of something spicy, maybe the captain's stash, or maybe just wishful thinking. His coat swishes as he turns, and you're noticing his rings, glinting like tiny suns, a reminder of the loot that sets him apart. The crew's watching him too, some with envy, others with awe, and you're wondering if his smile's a weapon, disarming foes as much as his cutlass. You're leaning against the barrel, its wood warm and splintered, and the sea spray stings your face, sharp and cold. The captain's now inspecting a map, his teeth flashing as he laughs at a sailor's quip. The ship's bell clangs, jarring your nerves, and you flinch, your heart racing like you're the one under scrutiny. You're starting to feel like you're in a floating court, where a good smile's as rare as a calm sea. A gull screeches overhead, and you glance up, squinting against the glare, wondering what's next. More captain's tricks, or back to the crew's grim remedies. The air's briny, mixed with that faint spice, and it's almost enough to make you forget the gunpowder and salt. Almost. Joke time. Why was the captain's smile so bright? Because he plundered the best dental plan? You're not laughing, though, because the crew's muttering about a storm brewing, and you're pretty sure their teeth aren't ready for it. The sea's rough, waves tossing spray onto the deck, and you're gripping the barrel tighter, your knuckles pale. You're curious, despite the captain's swagger, about how he pulls this off, spices, loot, or something else entirely. The crew's energy is tense, like they're waiting for his next move, and you're just hoping to stay out of trouble, watching this pearly grin shine like a beacon in a sea of dental decay. You're still swaying on that sun-baked pirate ship, the Caribbean's salty breeze doing little to cool your scorched skin, and the captain's gleaming grin is still a mystery that makes your own teeth feel inadequate. The deck's a mess of tangled ropes and splintered crates, and you're sidestepping a sailor who's patching a sail, his needle flashing in the sunlight. Remember that captain chewing cloves like a high seas aristocrat? You're now diving into the crew's myths about hygiene, the wild tales they tell, to make sense of their rotting mouths and gritty remedies. The seas churning, waves slapping the hull like they're impatient, and the air's thick with brine and the faint tang of tar. You're here to debunk the legend that pirates were filthy chaos, and it's a dirtier job than you expected. Mainstream fact? While 18th century pirates were often seen as unkempt, many took pride in basic grooming, including dental care, using whatever was available, salt, rum, or gunpowder, to maintain some semblance of hygiene, as noted in sailors' diaries from the period. You're watching a wiry pirate, his tunic stained with grease, scrub his face with a rag dipped in seawater, then rub salt on his teeth like it's a ritual. He's muttering about keeping the spirits clean, and you're close enough to smell the salt's sharp bite mixed with his sour breath. The ship lurches, and you grab a barrel, your boots slipping on the slick deck, wondering how much of this is habit and how much is superstition. You're trying to wrap your head around the idea that pirates cared about cleanliness when every mouth you've seen looks like a shipwreck. The wiry pirate's now passing the rag to a mate who's got a scarf tied over his head and teeth that haven't seen a good day in years. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed bad breath could curse a ship's luck, so they'd chew herbs or swish rum to purify their mouths, thinking it kept storms at bay. You're picturing this guy gargling to save the ship, and it's almost funny until you see his gums red and swollen from scurvy. The deck's buzzing, shouts, creaking wood, a gull's screech, but you're focused on these hygiene myths, wondering if they're desperate hopes or just tall tales. Historians still argue whether pirates' grooming habits were practical or rooted in superstition, with some saying they mimicked naval discipline, while others think they were chasing myths to feel in control. Either way, you're not convinced salt's saving anyone's smile. You shuffle along the deck, the wood warm underfoot, and catch a whiff of something herbal, maybe a sailor's stash of dried mint, or maybe just your imagination. The wiry pirate's still scrubbing, his rag now grey with grime, and you're wincing at the thought of what's left on his teeth. The sun's high, baking your neck, and you're noticing the crew's hands, scarred, calloused, and definitely not sterile, as they pass around a jug, probably rum for another purifying swish. You're leaning against the barrel, its wood rough and sticky with tar, and the sea spray hits your face, sharp and cold. It's a brief relief from the deck's heat, but the myths are sticking to you like damp salt. Another sailor, this one with a faded tattoo on his arm, chimes in, claiming gunpowder burns away curses in the mouth. The crew's nodding, like it's wisdom from the gods, and you're starting to feel like you're in a floating cult of bad dental advice. The ship's bell clangs, jarring your nerves, and you flinch, your heart racing like you've been caught slacking. You're curious, despite the absurdity, about what other myths they're clinging to, more herbs maybe, or something wilder. Joke time, why did pirates scrub so hard? Because they thought cleanliness was next to plunder. You're not laughing though, because the wiry pirate's spitting into the sea, and you're pretty sure it's not just seawater. The sea's rough, waves tossing spray onto the deck, and you're gripping the barrel tighter, your knuckles pale. You're wondering if the next port will shed light on these myths, or if the crew's just doomed to their rotting grins. Their energy's restless, like they're itching for a raid to distract from their aching jaws, and you're just hoping to stay out of the way, watching this hygiene folklore unfold like a salty, superstitious saga. You're still swaying on that sun-scorched pirate ship, the Caribbean's briny air stinging your eyes, and the crew's hygiene myths, chewing herbs to ward off curses, are starting to sound like desperate prayers against their rotting teeth. The deck's a tangle of ropes and barrels, and you're dodging a sailor who's sharpening a cutlass, his grunts mixing with the waves' steady slap against the hull. Remember that wiry pirate scrubbing with seawater? You're now in the thick of a raid's aftermath, the crew flush with loot, and you're watching them barter their plunder for a rare chance at dental relief. The sea's calmer now, glinting under a fading sun, and the air's thick with salt and the smoky tang of gunpowder from a recent skirmish. You're here to see how pirates turn treasure into tooth fixes, and it's a wilder market than you expected. Mainstream fact. In the 18th century, pirates often used their plunder to barter for goods and services in port towns, including crude dental care from local healers or blacksmiths, as noted in records from Nassau and Port Royal. You're watching a burly pirate, his tunic torn from the raid, haggle with a shifty-looking trader who's set up a makeshift stall on the deck. The trader's got a leather pouch of tools, pliers, a chipped blade, and what might be a silver coin for filling cavities, and the pirate's offering a gold ring glinting in the sun for a quick tooth repair. You're close enough to hear the trader's sly chuckle, and you're gripping a crate, your boots sticky on the tar-smeared planks, wondering if this deal's worth the pain. You're imagining the transaction, gold for a less agonizing smile, and your own jaw clenches, half expecting a scam. The burly pirate's face is scarred, his eyes narrow as he inspects the trader's tools, and you're noticing the crowd gathering, sailors clutching their own loot, rings, coins, even a pearl necklace. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed silver fillings traded from plunder could bind a tooth spirit, a superstition blending European and Caribbean folklore. You're picturing this guy with a mouth full of cursed treasure, and it's almost funny until you see him wince, pointing to a blackened molar. The deck's buzzing, shouts, clinking coins, a gull's screech, but you're focused on this dental barter, wondering if that silver will save his tooth or just his pride. Historians still argue whether these portside dental deals were effective or just expensive placebos, with some saying they offered real relief, while others think traders exploited desperate pirates with shoddy work. Either way, you're not signing up for a coin in your mouth. You shuffle closer, your boots catching on a rope, and catch a whiff of something metallic. Maybe the trader's tools, or maybe the loot itself. The burly pirate hands over the ring, and the trader starts poking at his tooth with a blade, the pirate's muffled groan making you wince. The crew's half laughing, half grimacing, and you're starting to feel like you're at a floating flea market where pain's the currency. You're leaning against the crate, its wood warm and splintered, and the sea spray hits your face, sharp and cold. It's a brief relief from the deck's heat, but the barter's tension is palpable, like a bad deal waiting to sour. Another sailor, this one with a faded tattoo, tosses a coin into the trader's pouch, demanding a gum rub with some mysterious salve. The ship's bell clangs, jarring your nerves, and you flinch, your heart racing like you're the one under the blade. You're curious, despite the grim scene, about what else they're trading. More silver, maybe, or something weirder. The air's smoky, mixed with the trader's herbal salve, and it's almost enough to mask the stench of sweat and fish. Joke time. Why did pirates trade for dental fixes? Because gold was cheaper than groaning. You're not laughing, though, because the burly pirate's groaning louder, and you're pretty sure that blade's not sterile. The sea's glinting, waves lapping gently now, and you're gripping the crate tighter, your knuckles pale. You're wondering if the next port'll have better healers, or if the crew's just doomed to these shady deals. Their energy's restless, like they're itching to spend more loot, and you're just hoping to stay out of the trader's sights, watching this dental marketplace unfold like a gritty chapter in a pirate's log. You're still aboard that weathered pirate ship, the Caribbean sun dipping low, painting the sea gold, and the chaotic barter for dental fixes, gold rings for silver fillings, still echoes in your ears like a bad deal gone sour. The deck's a mess of ropes and spilled loot, and you're sidestepping a sailor who's counting coins, his fingers grimy and his tunic reeking of sweat. Remember that burly pirate wincing under the trader's blade? You're now on a tropical island, the ship anchored off a lush shore where palm trees sway and the crew's scavenging for fruit to soothe their aching gums. The air's humid, thick with the sweet scent of overripe mangoes and the briny tang of the sea. You're here to see how nature's bounty offers pirates a rare dental reprieve, and it's a sweeter scene than the ship's grim remedies. Mainstream fact. In the 18th century, pirates docking at tropical ports like Jamaica or the Bahamas often consumed fruits like limes and mangoes, rich in vitamin C, which helped combat scurvy and ease gum pain, as noted in maritime logs from the period. You're watching a wiry pirate, his scarf loose and stained, bite into a juicy mango, the golden pulp dripping down his chin as he sighs with relief. His gums, still red from scurvy, seem less angry, and you're close enough to smell the fruit's sugary tang, a stark contrast to the ship's usual stench. The shore's alive with rustling leaves and the crew's laughter, and you're dodging a fallen coconut, your sandals sinking into the warm sand. You're imagining the taste, tart, lush, like a burst of sunlight, and your own mouth waters, craving relief from the memory of gunpowder and salt. The wiry pirate passes a mango to a mate, who's got a gold hoop in his ear and teeth that look like they've fought a losing battle. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believe chewing citrus fruits could chase the devil from their gums, a mix of folklore and accidental wisdom about scurvy's cure. You're picturing this guy chomping limes like they're holy relics, and it's almost funny until you see him wince, a sore tooth protesting the acid. The beach is buzzing, waves lapping, parrots squawking, but you're focused on this fruity ritual, wondering if it's the crew's best shot at dental peace. Historians still argue whether pirates knowingly used fruit to fight scurvy or just stumbled into it, with some saying their port diets saved lives, while others think it was luck more than science. Either way, you're not arguing with a mango. You shuffle through the sand, the grains warm underfoot, and catch a whiff of something floral, maybe wild jasmine growing nearby. The wiry pirate's now tossing mango pits into the surf, and you're noticing the crew's hands, scarred, sticky with juice, and finally clean for once. The sun's sinking, casting long shadows, and you're wondering if this island's got more than fruit to offer, maybe a healer who's not wielding a rusty blade. You're leaning against a palm tree, its bark rough and warm, and the sea breeze cools your face, soft and salty. The crew's sprawled on the shore, some chewing limes, others sucking on guavas, their faces relaxed for the first time in weeks. A sailor with a faded tattoo cracks a coconut, offering you a sip, and you're tempted, the milky scent cutting through the fruit's sweetness. The tide's gentle, lapping at the sand, and you're starting to feel like you're in a pirate's version of paradise, where pain takes a backseat to pulp. You're curious, despite the calm, about what's next. More fruit, or back to the ship's gritty fixes. The crew's energy is lazy, like they're savoring this reprieve. And you're just hoping to keep the peace, watching this tropical dental remedy unfold like a rare, juicy chapter. Joke time, why did pirates love mangoes? Because they were the real treasure for their teeth. You're not laughing, though, because the wiry pirate's wincing again, and you're pretty sure fruit's not fixing everything. The sea's glinting, waves whispering against the shore, and you're gripping the palm tree, your fingers tracing its ridges. You're wondering if the next raid will bring more than fruit, maybe a proper cure for their aching jaws. The crew's chatter is soft, like they're half asleep, and you're just soaking in this moment, watching the sunset turn the island into a golden haven for scurvy-scarred smiles. You're still on that weathered pirate ship, the Caribbean night now cloaking the deck in a velvet hush, stars glinting like scattered coins above the gently rocking sea. The crew's tooth-bragging contest, gaps as gold medals, has faded into soft snores and the creak of rigging, and you're alone at the ship's rail, the wood cool under your palms. Remember that burly pirate boasting about his cracked molar? You're now reflecting on the wild dental saga you've witnessed, from gunpowder scrubs to mangoes, and what it says about pirate life's gritty resilience. The air's soft, laced with salt, and the faint sweetness of a distant island, and you're here to ponder these sea dogs' stubborn survival, their teeth a map of their chaos, mainstream fact. In the 18th century, pirates' dental struggles reflected their broader fight for survival, with improvised remedies like gunpowder and fruit revealing a resourcefulness born of necessity, as noted in maritime histories of the golden age of piracy. You're leaning over the rail, the sea's dark expanse shimmering below, and you're thinking about that wiry pirate chewing mangoes, his gums finding relief in a rare moment of plenty. The ship sways gently and you're noticing the stars' reflection, like tiny lanterns on the water, a quiet contrast to the crew's daytime clamor. You're wondering how they kept going, through scurvy, pain, and those rusty tongs, when every tooth was a battle. You're feeling a strange respect for their grit, like your own jaws learned something from their stubbornness. The deck's empty now, save for a lone sailor curled by a barrel, his scarf loose and his breath heavy with rum. Here's a quirky tidbit. Some pirates believed the stars held secrets to healing, whispering that a full moon could strengthen teeth if you faced it while chewing salt. You're picturing that gold-hoofed pirate staring skyward, salt on his tongue, and it's almost poetic until you remember his bleeding gums. The night's calm, the waves' soft lap blending with the ship's creaks, and you're focused on this quiet moment, wondering if the stars really cared about their smiles. Historians still argue whether pirates' dental fixes were clever or just desperate, with some saying their ingenuity kept them fighting, while others think they were chasing myths to outrun pain. Either way, you're not judging, you're just glad to have a toothbrush waiting at home. You shift your weight, the rails smooth under your hands, and catch a whiff of something herbal, maybe a sailor's mint stash, or maybe just the island's breeze. The crew's asleep, their toothaches silent for now, and you're marveling at how they turned pain into pride, from tavern boasts to silver fillings. The ship's bell tolls softly, a low hum, and you're lulled by the sound, your heart slowing as the sea whispers its own story. You're tracing the stars with your eyes, their patterns ancient and indifferent, and you're thinking back to the captain's pearly grin, the surgeon's tongs, the Nassau tavern's tales. Each was a piece of this floating world where teeth were as much a fight as any raid. The air's cool, brushing your face like a sigh, and you're starting to feel the weight of the days slip away, like a tide pulling back. You're curious, despite the calm, about what stories these pirates carried beyond their teeth, beyond the sea. The crew's dreams are quiet, their energy spent, and you're just soaking in this moment, letting the night's peace wrap you like a worn sail. Joke time. Why did pirates love the stars? Because they dreamed of smiles that shone as bright. You're not laughing, though, because the sea's too gentle, the night too soft. The waves lap, the stars gleam, and you're sinking into the ship's rhythm, your thoughts as slow as the tide. Now let's ease you into the quiet, the Caribbean night, cradling you like a hammock strung between stars. You're still at that rail, the sea's whisper soft as a lullaby, its dark waves carrying away the day's chaos, gunpowder, rum, and all those aching teeth. The ship rocks gently, its creaks a familiar hum, and you're letting your shoulders loosen, your breath deepen. The air's cool, scented with salt and distant blooms, and you're picturing the crew asleep, their scarred hands still, their boasts silent. Each remedy, salt, fruit, silver, was a fight to keep going, and now you're letting that fight fade, like footprints in the sand. The stars above are soft, their light a gentle glow, and you're sinking deeper, the sea's rhythm pulling you to rest. Feel the breeze, light as a whisper, brushing your face, carrying you to a place where pain's a distant memory. You're safe here, wrapped in the night's embrace, the ship a cradle under an endless sky. Sleep easy, friend, as the waves sing you home.